Hey, what's up? It's your boy Negro Jones here. Thanks for coming to the channel. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's session of the Cozy Cabin Cabarets. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let's jump right into this. All right, so in the last couple of podcasts, it's been 3 already. Wow, time's flying. We looked at some similarities and we drew some loose associations, some loose connections between some of these instances that were happening in film and how they were relating and how we were seeing earmarks and clues that paralleled in reality, right? But what I want to do is I want to back up and we looked at Rosemary's Baby, right? And that was an intense film. Because not only did she have a baby and she didn't know what was wrong with it, but as the film transpires, you begin to see some eerie things kind of unravel, right? And then there's that iconic moment where, she walks through the dining room into, the little side room, into the little room there, and she looks down. And she sees the baby, and then she's like, what have you done to it, and all this, and, and I don't want to spoil it for viewers who haven't seen this, but this was a big moment. And then when you look at the fact that when she was able to kind of dig a little deeper, she saw all the inner workings of a ritual, right? She saw, had her laying on the bed, had, the markings in blood. All of this stuff was like ritualistic. And then by the time you get to The Omen, you're dealing with a Rosemary's Baby scenario, but like almost like a case study. Like, let's follow this kid throughout its young life and its adulthood. And you get to see how this kid kind of, by means of luck and shadowy hands working behind the scenes, ends up being this tycoon in politics and so powerful. And I think the really cool thing that you need to take away from looking at this is you start to see a story emerge, a very cool story that there's layers to. Now, before we get into it too heavily, I'd like to introduce a concept, or a book rather, and it's called The Vril, The Power of the Coming Race, and that's by Edward Leighton. Now, let's look at the plot summary with that. It's a young traveler who decides to take a trip with his buddy, who is a mine engineer, deep down within the depths of the mine shaft, and they make some pretty astonishing discoveries. They find out that there's all of this Egyptian architecture, for one, and then they meet this race that, get this, is telepathic, right? We got into the hive mind thing. And they were an old, lost, long forgotten race that had scurried underground to escape this giant flood. Now, how about that? So there's your biblical reference right there. And for all you history and mythology buffs, how many times do we see this template in mythological stories, right? I mean, the flood is confirmed in many different pantheons, not just Christianity. Not that this is a religious podcast, but just saying. All right, so do me a favor, guys. Go to Google and type in Vril, V-R-I-L. Go to images and look at the imagery that they use for this, all right? And if you haven't read the book, read it. Or at least check out a plot summary or some type of synopsis or review that'll give you more of the general summary than I just did. But, the Vril has gotten some attention recently, within the past, I'd say 5 to 10 years, by various celebrities who were on their way out the door in Hollywood, and a few no-namers that insist that they've discovered or rediscovered the emergence of this group that is still alive and well. One of the things that becomes very synonymous when you mention the Vril, at least in the recent sense, is the idea of drones, droning people. Kind of like another word for cloning, but maybe a more politically correct, modernized version of that term. And the droning process is somewhat linked to, if not fully linked to, the droning parasite, which seems to be this little caterpillar-looking organism. As a matter of fact, keep that in mind because we're going to cover that more in depth later, the Vril parasite. So yeah, just type that into your search engine and take a look at it, because I can think of some things off the top of my head that reminds me of, and it's shown itself in countless films. I just doubt a lot of people even know what it is. Now, that book was published in 1871, and I forgot to mention in the last episode Bill Cooper's work. William Cooper. Matter of fact, I think you can still pull up some of his lectures online now, but there was a book he published called Behold a Pale Horse, and I can't remember when exactly that was published, but it definitely shook the Richter scale when it came out, because he basically confirmed, and I think he was the first one that broke the concept of we had been lied to since 1947, and that the United States, as well as other countries within the world, had been working with extraterrestrials. Matter of fact, do me a favor, guys. If you haven't done it already, look up Bill Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse, and the Vril, the power of the coming race. And just briefly skim over what you can about the plot summary, the general synopsis, and get back at me. That way you have some preliminary information going into this. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be my time for today's episode of the Cozy Cabin Cabarets. I hope you enjoyed this information-filled, action-packed conversation. And next time we're going to go into we're going to keep this conversation going. So just make sure you're watching some films, reading some books, and staying informed and staying out of the way. It's a lot of crazy going on. But as always, till next time, more.